All right, and welcome my friend to the third video in our grind style complex series using our NOS suspension straps, or the suspension straps of your choice, in a very efficient micro workout, particularly for stimulating muscle growth and hypertrophy. Today, we're addressing our squat chain, everything below the waist, our leg muscles as it were. I already covered push and pull, and I'll have links down below to those other videos if you want to check those out. But today is a little bit different because we're not including 3 exercises like we did in the past couple of workouts. We have 4 exercises with a bit more particular emphasis on the hamstrings. And the reason for this is because a lot of times, in my experience, it's hamstring and hip weakness that holds people's lower body development back, both in strength and building muscle. So to set up, we've got our NOS suspension straps set roughly at about knee height, maybe a little bit higher or lower based on your personal preference. We're gonna start off with what I like to call hamstring hell, which is basically hamstring curls followed by hip extensions. And make it easy to get in, okay? Don't do this kind of thing, which is really weird and awkward. Just lay back, slip your heels in, and you're ready to rock and roll. Feet are right underneath the anchor point. So the hamstring curls involve locking the hips and moving the knees. It's not necessarily this. That is okay to do. It's still going to work. And if you're new to the exercise, it may be a good place to start. But remember, we get resistance by moving against gravity. And this doesn't have a whole lot of resistance to it. So you want to lock up your glutes and your hips really tight, packing those shoulders. And we're pulling our heels towards our hips, keeping this relatively straight. Okay, so not this, but this. So hips are locked, knees are moving, and you'll get 8 to 10 repetitions for this. Now, I'm not counting necessarily because I'm talking to you fine folks, but you want to make sure that everything on your backside is working at least isometrically to provide support. Once you get about 8 to 10, now we bend our knees 90 degrees. So before we were moving our knees, locking our hips, now we lock our knees and we move our hips. So we're fundamentally still kind of doing the same thing, but we're focusing on the hip drive. A lot of tension in the glutes. We're not trying to lift with our lower back. It's all glutes and hamstrings, and you're probably going crazy in the hamstrings. That's why I call it hamstring hell. And if it's cramping up or you're getting weaker and stuff from the fatigue, really good way to build up the hamstrings. Just don't go quite as high. So we'll go about 8 to 10 on that as well. And then we'll flip around and we'll go with the other part of the thighs in the quadriceps with our suspension sissy squat. I love this exercise. One of my all-time favorites. Although, like many, I used to echo the idea that it was bad for the knees, particularly because I've always had terrible knees. However, this is one of the ways I healed my knees once I learned what to do properly, which was make sure your glutes is still engaged. Sissy squats do not isolate your quads, because remember, we don't want isolation, we want emphasis. So my hamstrings and my glutes are still engaged, arms are out straight, I'm not leaning on the straps because I want the weight on my legs, and the knees come down and forward, gently touching the floor. Or if you're new to the exercise, you don't have to come all the way down. But again, if you break at your hips like that, that's a lot easier, which is a good way to get out of the exercise if you get stuck. But ideally, we feel like we're pushing our hips forward, kind of like we're dancing a limbo dance underneath a limbo bar. And we'll get, again, 8 to 10-ish of those, rolling on the balls of the feet, just keeping the breathing smooth. A lot of emphasis on the quads. If you haven't done this before in a while, it's probably gonna make your quad sore the next day because it's really making a big range of motion in the quadricep muscle. Okay, so that's roughly about that. Again, I'm not really counting. I'll put full details to the workouts down below, and then we will alternate our hover lunges. Some people call these skater squats, whatever you want to call it, but we don't want to put too much weight on the straps. We want the weight, again, on our legs. We're trying to work our legs. So we're here, this leg is up, coming down, touch the knee, and back on up. do your best not to let that foot touch. Even the slightest touch makes this a lot easier. And in grind style calisthenics, we don't do things the easy way. In fact, if you come out straight, that's going to be even better, aka more difficult. And just kind of back and forth. And this, because it's alternating, we'll go for 14 to 20 reps. Here, I'm getting kind of out of breath, as is the case with leg training, as it should be. Leg day is cardio day in many ways. But yeah, 14 to 20 or so. A few rounds. Remember, we're trying to cook the muscle to stimulate hypertrophy. Rest as needed between the sets. Listen to your body. Don't do things that hurt, as always. And let me know if you have questions down below. Hit the likes, the shares, and all that stuff if you find these videos helpful. I got links down below too if you want to pick up some of the best suspension straps on the market, NOSC Twin Trainer. But thank you very much for watching. As always, best of luck in today's workout. Be fit and live free.